Hey guys, how you doing today? I am having an issue with my Begonia Luxurians. I was talking to my friend about it today that has one, and she's having the same issues. So she was looking up and doing some reading. I was doing a bunch of reading. Tried to find a couple of videos, and there just really isn't any informational videos out there on this plant. It's more just look what I bought type of video that I'm finding. So I dug in, done a bunch of more research. I researched usually 3, 4, 5 different websites just to make sure that I'm getting the right information and similar information. A lot of the information that I was finding was, of course, growing it outside. Well, I live in Ohio. I don't live in a southern part of the states where I can grow this outside and not have to worry about it. So I was specifically looking for indoor care on this plant. But I will pop a picture up of what this plant is actually supposed to look like, because mine looks nothing like it. Okay, so now that you've seen what the plant is supposed to look like, and my sorry specimen of a plant, all the information that I have found is the same about where it comes from. It comes from Brazil, tropical rainforest. So it's getting a lot of water. It's got a lot of organic medium that it grows on. It lives in dappled shade out in the wild. So that tells me a lot right there about this plant. So, but it also needs well-draining soil, but it needs to stay moist. So problem number one, I have her in a terracotta pot, and she does dry down, and I'm watering her a lot. I do have her in a heavier mixture of soil, because that is how I grow the majority of my begonias, because all begonias, especially the cane begonias, well, really, I mean all of them, they all come from a tropical atmosphere. You know, you can't keep them outside, you can't overwinter them outside, you know, because they are a tropical plant. Now, there are tropical begonias, or there are begonias that you can grow outside. A couple of them are winter hardy, but you know, they've been grown to withstand those kind of temperatures. But we're talking about actual tropical begonias that do not do well in temperatures under 50 degrees. So what I want to do is I want to get her in a plastic pot to start. And I have a soil mixture here from what I was reading online. Let me move her. But what we need is, we need some regular soil. Now this is some soil that I mixed up for my begonia, one of my Hoyas the other day. So I'm going to go ahead and use that, but I'm going to be adding to my mix. Now this mix already has soil, it has cocoa coir, and it has perlite in it. But so what I'm going to be adding is a little bit of spag and a little more perlite, because you want your soil to be a little heavier, which is what the cocoa coir or the peat is for. So this is what you need to grow this begonia properly, and a little bit of bark. Now I have the fine bark. It's all I have because I have not been, I stopped using bark in my soil mixtures because I believe it is adding to the gnat problem, because once bark gets wet it starts out dry and it takes a really long time to soak in, but after you water your plants a few times that bark stays soggy and it never really dries out completely, and I think that's adding to a lot of the issues with gnat problems that everybody's having, because everybody's adding bark which does not dry out sufficiently when it's mixed in with soil. But anyways, I'm going to go against my better judgment, and I am going to add a little bit of bark to my soil mixture for this begonia because she does need it. Now in the house, you want to grow it in the winter time. You want to grow it in a bright window. So like a south facing window or under a grow light. In the summertime, you'd want to move it to like maybe an east window, or you could put it in a west window, but don't have it right up to the window where it's going to get sun, because leaves are going to burn. Now, I've been growing mine under my Mars Hydrolite, and I think that that Mars Hydrolite is too strong for this particular begonia. My other begonias grow wonderfly under that light. But if you can see, my leaves are browning. And that could be, and look, there went a gnat. And that could be from underwatering it. But it also could be from my Mars, being under my Mars Hydrolite. Like this leaf right here, it is also turning brown. But all the new growths that are coming out, well, the tips of these are brown also. But that could be too much light and me not watering it enough for what she likes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these leaves off. It has all new growth coming out here. It has this nice leaf. It has more new growth coming out here and here. Now, I'm not going to do anything. This was originally the top of the plant. Yeah, it's still green. I just pinched the very tip of it off to see, and both of them are still green. And actually, this pot I'm planning on putting her in may be too big of a pot. I may have to go down a pot size or two. I want to see what the roots look like. So let's get her out of the pot. This is Begonia Luxurians. Let's set this stuff off to the side. Let's get her out of this pot and get her. Nope, that's too high. I thought maybe that would work out better, but there we go. Oh, I want to dump my spag in my water. I have a bowl of water right there. I want to dump that in and get it moist. It's much easier to work with, and for watering purposes, to start out using moist spag, so it's nice to soak it. Okay, let's get her out of this pot. I want to see her root system, and then I can really decide what kind of pot, what size of pot to put her in, because I have a pretty good feeling this pot is way too. And I want to make sure I'm grabbing on the stem when I push her up. I'm pushing up through the hole on the bottom of this pot. Oh, wow. Okay, her root system is much, much larger than I would have even imagined. See there, she's got a nice root system. So I'm just going to knock off a little bit of this. You can see what my Mars Hydro Grow Light is doing. It's turning the perlite green because it's such a strong light. My sphagnum and my grow tent under that Mars Hydro Light, it turns green too. And it's not because it's growing, it's because it's algae. Okay, I'm just gently, and I'm not tearing this whole begonia apart. Once again, I'm lifting her up. So I think the pot that I picked out for her is going to be sufficient. It's going to be a nice pot for her to grow down into. So what I want to do right now is, I never have enough room on this little table. But what I want to do right now is I want to try to guesstimate for this pot size, because I don't want to make up a bunch of the soil mixture because I just want it for this plant. So I'm going to put in, and I got to figure there's about 2 inches of soil. So we'll try that. I'm going to put in just a hair more. And then I'm going to put in some of my bark for the organic part of it. And then I'm going to add in a little more cocoa coir. And then I'm going to add in my perlite. Now, I'm going to stop. I got to add in my, I want to get rid of this. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to dump this in. And then I'm going to add my spag. And I'm picking it up, and I've already cut it into little pieces. I'm wringing it out. And I want to make sure I cut it because I have a long fiber spag, so I cut it up into little tiny pieces, you can see. And I think that might do it. I want to look. I want it to be a little bit of a heavier soil, but yet I want it to drain. I also want it to drain nicely. I just want it to hold the moisture a little bit longer, but I also want it to drain quickly. So I think I'm going to add just a little more perlite. Just a little more cocoa coir, and a little more bark. I'm just going to add it all. That wasn't a whole lot to begin with. This mixture is also really good for anthuriums, but with the anthurium I add more spag. This I just lightly have spag in. Okay, so now I'm going to fill up my pot. I need about a 3-inch clearance to put my plant down into. Set her down in there. And I'm going to go ahead and pack that so that it doesn't settle a whole lot when I'm watering. So let's see. I'm going to knock off just a little bit more because that terracotta pot was a little wider. So I'm just going to set her down. Oh, that is perfect, except for that root sticking out. I'm just going to tuck that down in. And then what I'm going to do is this, I'm just going to gently poke a few holes. I'm not going to go crazy because I don't want to break up a bunch of roots. I'm just going to give the soil that she's in a little bit of air. And I'm going to try to knock some of this other soil away. Because like I said, I did have her in a pretty thicker soil, which is how I pretty much plant all of my begonias, because they are, the cane begonias are a tropical plant, and I have a lot of cane begonias. Oh, and by the way, in that soil mixture, I also had worm castings in it that I forgot to mention. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly put a little more perlite around here. And then I'm going to add some more of my soil mix. And just pressing down lightly. Need a little bit more to add to it. Okay, that looks good. Let me clean up my area and we'll talk about the next thing. Okay guys, I got my table all cleaned off. Now the next thing I want to talk about that I found out about this plant that I think is very interesting is it likes a very acidic soil. And usually acidic is running between 5.5 and at the highest 6. You get anything over 6 and your acidity in your soil is going away. Well, that is part of my other problem with this plant. And probably a couple other plants that I have that don't do well for me because my pH is too high. I have well water. My well water runs about 7.8 and sometimes higher depending on how much rain we've had. My well water pH will skyrocket up over the 8s. So it explains a lot to me after reading it, and I should have known better because I raise orchids. And I know that orchids like to be on the lower acidity scale, which is why when I feed my orchids or water my orchids, in order to lower my pH, I use liquid black coffee. It lowers the pH in my water so that my orchids thrive. I know a lot of people use a lot of different things, and that's fine. If you have high pH and you're trying to grow this plant or any other plant like a calathea, and I have a ton of problems with calatheas, so that could be some of my issue. And it didn't hit me with those until I read low acidity. So I was like, oh, okay, so I would have to treat this plant and water her the same way that I water my orchids. Now what I do is I fill up my water jug. It's just a either old milk jug or an old water jug or whatever. This is what I use to water my plants. And I fill my jug up. I put a half a cup of black coffee in my water container, and then I fill it up with water. And that's how I water my orchids to bring my pH down. And it works very, very well because black coffee is very acidic. So that's what I've always done for my orchids, and I've also used it on a few houseplants that are struggling, because coffee also is very high in nitrogen, so that's very, very good for your plants, which actually I need to start doing that again, especially through the winter. But anyways, totally off subject. So this, I have my half a cup of black coffee, liquid coffee, not coffee grounds. I use coffee grounds outside of my garden, but I don't use them in my houseplants, because when you put coffee grounds into a houseplant in a container, in a house that especially doesn't have a lot of air movement in it usually, and it's harder to control the temperatures, it molds. So I am just going to keep watering her. I want to see it's draining nicely. I'm happy with that. I want to see water come out of the bottom. I am going to straighten her up here a little bit. I'm going to probably have to add some more soil, because even though I pushed it down, it might be okay. So this coffee is lowering my pH, and like I said, my well water, I know for a fact, runs about 7.7, 7.8, because I used to raise angelfish. Geez, I couldn't think of them. And they like a very black water environment. So they like a very acidic. They have a lot of, where angelfish live in the wild, they have a lot of old fallen tree in the water, and it makes the water very brackish, which is very low acidic. So I learned from growing or raising my angelfish about that. Well, then I went and I started raising cichlids, and they like a higher pH. So my pH for my water for my African cichlids are wonderful for them. They have great color, and they really like it. But anyways, I'm hoping that with everything I've done, getting her into a plastic pot, so first of all, she don't dry out too quickly, and lowering my well water pH down to a more acidic, hopefully that she will like it a little bit better than my higher pH. I mean, we have really great well water here. I know a lot of people don't have really fantastic well water. We do have a lot of iron in our well water, but I never have any issues out of my plants from using that water. So, I mean, I do struggle with some plants, and this is actually one of them. This is a very touchy cane begonia. So, it doesn't surprise me that I was having the issues that I was having. And I think her being under my Mars Hydrolite, directly under it, was too much. Between the high pH and then the high light, I think that's why my leaves were burning, because you can, or drying up, I mean, you can see it's got all kinds of new growth, and it's always done that for me after it straightened up from being shipped. But then every time my leaves would start growing and looking pretty, they would fail. So, moister soil, thicker soil, moved her into a plastic pot, lowered my pH with my beautiful black coffee, and I'm going to I think I'm going to switch around a couple of plants, and I'm going to put another plant in her spot under my Mars Hydrolite, and I'm going to put her over in the south window, which is behind you guys. It gets beautiful light. I grow all my succulents in the window there. I have my purple passion there. I have my alocasia frydek there. I have a couple of Hoyas there. So I'm thinking if I put her about maybe, I'm going to try about 2 feet from the window into a more dappler sunlight and see if that works. Because I can always scoot her up, you know, a little bit closer to the window, because in wintertime, you do want her to have a little more light, because they do go dormant. And I've noticed that a lot about all of my king begonias. They do go somewhat dormant, and they go deciduous a little bit in the wintertime. So, you know, and usually that means the bottom leaves yellow. They start yellowing. And you'll get a few in the middle and the top too. They yellow off and they fall. So try to keep your cane begonias in a higher light in wintertime, and keep them a little bit on the moist side. I've always said that my cane begonias like a lot of water, and I've had people tell me no, that they don't like a lot of water, but I always keep mine on the moist side, and I've never had any issues. My cane begonias grow like crazy, so I don't really get that. I mean, I guess it just depends on where you live. I don't know. But cane begonias do like a moister soil. So, I don't let any of my begonias dry down. So, anyways, I'm hoping this will work for her, because I'm getting off onto like 50 million different subjects like I always do. But we'll do an update in about a month and take a look at her after I've done what I've done, and I'm going to move her. And we'll see how she does if these leaves get bigger and grow and stop with all the browning, because my humidity is fine. Oh, that's another thing I didn't cover. These guys do like a little bit higher humidity now. A couple of the websites said about 50% humidity, and they said they're good for growing like under a dome or in a terrarium, but I don't see how you could ever grow this one under a dome or in a terrarium, because they're huge. If you're growing them in the house, they have the potential to get 8 foot tall, 6 or 8 foot tall, and out in the wild they can get 12 foot tall or more, you know, if you're growing them outside. So, you'd have to have a pretty big dome to do that, but I thought that was kind of funny, but they were probably just talking about when they're small. But I'm not going to put anything over mine. Maybe if I see more issues arising, but my humidity stays pretty good around 60 degrees in my house, so I don't see any other issues with that, but I don't know. So there you go, guys. That is the Begonia Luxurians. I'm no expert. I'm just trying to figure this plant out, and I'm hoping that she does better, because this is a begonia that I've wanted for a very, very long time, many years. I actually seen it the very first time on a very, very old gardening show. I seen this begonia and finally figured out the name of it. And I'll tell you, it is really hard to find. I've never been able to find it. And then now, like, all of a sudden, I see several people on YouTube getting it. And I'm like, you know, and it's usually the southern, you know, California, Florida, I think are the people I've seen where it's probably something that they grow outside. So anyways, I'm going to shut up. This video is going to be like forever long, and I didn't want it to be. But I'm going to let you guys go, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Peace.